In today's video, we will be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election, but in terms of polling. We're going to be taking a look at how the candidates perform in each state according to the polls that have been taken so far, which isn't a lot, but they'd still give us some type of an indication of how the 2024 election might go. Now, just to clarify, the two districts in Nebraska and Maine don't really have any polls, so I'm just going to put them as no polling. The first competitive state we're going to be taking a look at is the state of Arizona. Now, for the state of Arizona in 2024, we see some really mixed results. There are results suggesting that Biden are up, and there are results saying that Republicans are up. Typically, the polls are actually 50-50 about who's actually going to win the state, but Republicans do have larger leads in terms of polls that have been taken so far. Now, you can exclude this poll because it has Republican plus 11, and that's not going to happen, but generally Republicans are still favored in the state of Arizona according to polling. Now let's go to the next state in alphabetical order, which will be the state of Florida. Now, for the state of Florida, you see that Republicans are generally on top. This is not really much of a surprise considering Republicans did win the state in 2020. Furthermore, suggesting that Trump and DeSantis are probably gonna both perform pretty well in the state of Florida, and generally speaking, the state has a Republican advantage of about 4 points according to polling. Now let's go to the next state in alphabetical order, which will be the state of Georgia. Now for the state of Georgia, the results are actually pretty mixed. We see that, again, it's about a 50-50 break about how many polls think Biden's gonna win, and how many polls think that DeSantis or Trump is gonna win. Now it's pretty interesting to see how Citizen Awareness Project has so many polls, so this just makes the polling less accurate, but nonetheless speaking, it does look like Republicans have larger advantages in some of these polls, and therefore I'm going to give Georgia to Republicans by a tilt margin. Now let's go to the next competitive state, which I believe will be the state of Iowa. Now for the state of Iowa, I'm not very surprised to see that DeSantis and Trump are both going to win the state by around 10 points, and that's somewhere around my prediction too, so I'm going to give Iowa to Republicans by 10 points. Now to the next competitive state, which could be considered as Maine, but we're not going to really consider that in this video. Instead, we're going to go to the state of Michigan right now, which does suggest, again, it's kind of split depending on which poll you're looking at, but it's really 3 polls suggesting that Republicans are up and 3 polls suggesting that Democrats are up. But if you look at the Democratic advantages, there are larger advantages for Democrats, thus I'm going to give Michigan towards the Democratic Party. And next will be the state of Minnesota, another competitive state that starts with the letter H. This starts with the letter M, and we only have 2 polls here, both by Public Opinion Strategies, which isn't the best poll, but does suggest that Biden has around a 5-point lead over the Republican Party there. Now to the next state, which will be the state of Nevada. Now for the state of Nevada, we see again some inconsistencies. There's a Biden plus 8 poll outlier, and there's a DeSantis plus 10 poll outlier. Nonetheless speaking, you can see that in none of these polls have a candidate actually crossed 50%, despite the fact that some of these polls have Republican plus 10 or Democrat plus 8. Overall speaking, however, Republicans definitely are on top in the state of Nevada, thus I'll give the state to Republicans by a lead margin. Now to the next competitive state, we're going to go to the state of New Hampshire. Now for the state of New Hampshire, you do see that Democrats are generally ahead. You see that for one poll by New Hampshire Journal, you see that Sununu is up by 12, and another suggesting that Sununu is up by 8. Nonetheless, Chris Sununu will not be a Republican nominee, and pretty much any other Republican is not going to win the state of New Hampshire. I do believe that I'm going to give the state to Democrats by actually a likely margin, considering that the 2 Sununu polls are outliers, and that he is not going to run for public office, at least for the presidential election race. Now the next state will be the state of North Carolina, and we generally see that Republicans are still on top in most of these polls. Now there's a Trump plus 11 poll, and there are Trump plus 3 polls. Nonetheless speaking, I do think that Republicans are slightly favored in the state as well. However, it's interesting that 2 of the Republican-found polls actually have Democrats ahead, but I don't think that's very accurate either. Overall speaking, I'm just going to give the state to Republicans by around a lead margin. Now going to the next competitive state, we're going to go to the state of Ohio. And you can see that Trump and DeSantis are up by very large margins, with only one poll suggesting that Republicans are going to win by single digits. And overall speaking, Trump is ahead by around 12 points, and similarly, DeSantis is around plus 12 as well, though some polls have Trump upwards of plus 20. Overall, definitely Ohio will be a likely state for Republicans on this map. Now for the next state. The next state will be the state of Pennsylvania, a very much crucial state in the presidential election level. We see that there's actually a poll that includes RFK Jr., which is actually quite interesting, which does show that Kennedy is up by 4 points, but there's 20% undecided. Overall speaking though, Biden does seem to be leading both DeSantis and Trump in some of these polls, though again, there's not a lot of these polls that are actually taken. Overall speaking, I will give the state to Joe Biden by a lead margin. Now it comes down to the two final states, Wisconsin and Texas. Now the next state that will be taken into consideration is the state of Texas, and we generally see that Trump and DeSantis is definitely gonna win the state according to some of these polls. Now what's interesting in the state of Texas is that the results are actually quite consistent. We see that Republicans are winning in every single poll, but every single poll suggests that Republicans are winning by single digits, which means that polls in this state could actually be quite accurate overall speaking. Now I do think that they're underestimating Republicans slightly, but I think they're generally fine. Overall, it does give Texas to the Republicans by somewhere around a lean to likely margin. I'm going to be generous and give the Republicans a likely win. Now it actually leaves us in a very interesting situation. If Joe Biden wins the state of Wisconsin, it will be 269 to 267, but because both sides did not cross 270, it actually becomes a draw. However, for the state of Wisconsin in the final state that we'll be considering, you can see that Joe Biden is actually leading in every poll except one, which that poll that suggests that Trump is up by 10 is done by Trump Make America Great Again Committee, which is the Trump PAC. So this poll definitely isn't very accurate. Overall speaking, Joe Biden does seem to actually be ahead of both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis in the state of Wisconsin, which puts Democrats a narrow win in the state of Wisconsin. Now, this actually gives Democrats 269 to 267. Now, because there are two districts that are outstanding, Nebraska 2nd is probably going to go for Democrats, and the Maine 2nd is probably going to go for Republicans. Joe Biden actually has a win, but this is actually a pretty interesting map. You can see that Joe Biden wins the entire Rust Belt in the quote-unquote blue wall, while Republicans win many of these southern states that are actually trending towards the Democratic Party. Now, this map isn't actually that far off from what I actually predict the presidential election to be. But again, some of these margins are definitely off. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.